battling for dominance. A rival alpha to Godzilla.
You gotta be kidding.
Let me go on record by saying that I love the Godzilla franchise. Outside of the anime boom in the 1990s, it was my first exposure to Japanese cinema, and even some of the worst films have some type of entertainment value, even if it's mostly ironic or campy. And while I think the 2014 Godzilla reboot from Warner Bros. Had a solid 100 minutes of absolutely nothing worthwhile, the last 15 minutes really did blow my socks off. I wanted to open this review with that, so you can understand where I'm coming from when I say that when it comes to Godzilla 2 King of the Monsters, I genuinely cannot remember the last time I was watching a movie where I was so astonishingly, staggeringly, and insanely bored watching a film with so much money behind it. I'm not kidding, folks. Watching this movie and being so bored despite so much happening on screen was giving me an actual existential crisis that was akin to a religious experience. I was literally shell-shocked in my movie theatre. I was shook to such an extent that I may need therapy to try and work my way through this disconnect. And I'm fully aware that loads of people are going to shrug off my opinion by saying that I'm just a stuck-up critic who only loves art films and hates accessible blockbusters, but that just isn't the case. Some of my favourite movies are crowd-pleasing action tentpoles, and some of the movies that I've given the harshest reviews to have been indie darlings, and my opinions have ranged from everything in between. What I'm getting at is that I'm an equal opportunities critic, so my dislike of this movie does not stem from an imagined bias against the genre, but rather due to this film being a complete failure, not only from a story level, but everything from the pacing, the structure, the action, the dialogue. It just completely flies in the face of good storytelling. It's absolutely insane to me that a company like Warner Bros. Can continue spending $200 million plus on massive tentpole movies with such terrible scripts. The script writing process is literally the cheapest aspect of production, so why stinge on it? And I know what you're about to say, that you don't care about the script or the story as long as the action is good, and we'll get to that, but when you look at some of the greatest action movies ever made, like Die Hard, Terminator 2, The Avengers, you can have both. It's not unreasonable to ask for both. But Godzilla 2 is full of stock characters whose motivations don't make sense, arcs that don't even feel started, let alone fully realised. There's far too many human characters, and their motivations and personalities seem to change from scene to scene. We even have another villain who would rather kill untold numbers of people, destroying a system that's pretty easy to salvage, rather than deal with the underlying issues that's made the world so terrible in the first place. Hey, Nigel! Nigel, we've got another candidate for your Brexit party over here. Oi, you prick. The villain's motivations are so poorly executed that even when they are shown incontrovertible proof that their plan sucks, they just double down, because they're the villains, I guess. We have the cliche story of an estranged father trying to save their family, but he isn't so much a father as he is a god, since he seems to know absolutely everything about monsters, about mythology, about the world, the weather. He even interrupts military briefings to tell them how to do their jobs twice, and this guy is just meant to be the relatable everyman. The movie also attempts moments of comedy and levity akin to the work done by Marvel Studios, but none of them hit. It was honestly so awkward sitting in a full multiplex of people on opening day and not see a single joke land. I felt so devastated on behalf of the movie that I just wanted to sink into my seat and die of embarrassment. The dialogue is so terrible that it actually detracts from the visuals, as when the movie threatens to have a profound moment of visual storytelling, the characters have to awkwardly explain it. "It looks like the sky is alive," remarks one character. "Well, that's because it is," drones another. The whole movie is full of stuff like that. We have another character go on a self-sacrifice mission later on in the movie, but it's not in service of anything. It's not the culmination of an arc or in service of a theme. It's literally a character just dying to kickstart the plot for some arbitrary reason. This is the stuff I'm talking about when it comes to good storytelling in action movies. Theme, arcs, character. Godzilla 2 isn't just content with having bad versions of these. Instead, it just has none of them, which is why there's absolutely nothing to gravitate to. We also have a plot point where Godzilla and the other kaiju are known to the world, and the main characters have been researching the mythology of Godzilla and Ghidorah's rivalry for years, yet when they encounter stone carvings in the third act detailing this to them, one of the characters wistfully says, "So it's all true." Of course it's true, you fucking idiot, and you know it's true. You have literally been watching these monsters fight, and you were the one doing all the prior research on them. How can any Warner Brothers exec read that in the script and think, nope, this doesn't need any more work, here's the check for $200 million so you can shoot it? How the fuck does this even happen in 2019? I know the gig economy is pretty harsh, but there's no shortage of proofreaders out there. And did not a single editor pick up that line saying, you know what, that's a really stupid line that contributes nothing, can't we just delete it? Folks, I have been in a feature film editing suite. They watch those movies hundreds and hundreds of times. How can it go through that process and no one pick up on it? But what about the action? Well, have you seen the trailers? Well, you've seen all the awesome shots this movie has to offer, and the action doesn't even come close to the ending of the last movie, the Millennium Godzilla movies, or even the middle-of-the-road fare like Pacific Rim Uprising. The monster fights are either in the background behind the human stuff, or are shot too close to actually see what's happening. But here's the real killer. There is no pace or structure to these fights either. Good action sequences aren't just explosions or chases and bam bam, thank you ma'am. It's all about the back and forth where either side could win, but here there's none of that. There's no peaks and valleys. Instead, the monsters punch for a bit, mostly obscured in the background, then all of a sudden one side is about to win before some Deus Ex Machina happens and the fight continues. It's lifeless. Yeah, it's cool to see Mothra, but she gets nothing to do here. Seriously, take Mothra out of the movie, nothing changes. Even when she turns up in the final fight, it's not even to turn the tide, because Godzilla is already winning at this point. These fights are so poorly structured and thought out that children smashing action figures together could do a better job. A big point is made about how Godzilla doesn't need to fight alone because the military will help him, but at the start of the final fight, they just fire some missiles at Ghidorah, and then the military just vanish. Heck, at one point, even Mothra just vanishes from the scene that she is currently in, with no explanation. I genuinely don't think this movie has been released in a finished state. You could teach a class on this movie, as in how not to pace and structure a blockbuster. It's a prime what not to do example. And Ghidorah, despite looking awesome in this film, is a completely ineffectual villain. When he makes his big debut early on in the film, his first demonstration of strength is killing 5 human soldiers. That's it. And then later on in the movie, despite being a literal 3-headed dragon with lightning breath, he spends a solid minute trying to kill Millie Bobby Brown, and despite her having no means of escape, having no way to fight back, no weapons, and being a literal child, doesn't even get a scratch on her. And this monster's meant to be King Ghidorah? Caligula was a better monarch than him. It's a little historical joke for you folks out there. If I don't laugh, I'll cry. At one point, one of the characters gives Ghidorah the nickname Larry, Curly and Moe, and that is such an appropriate reference because this movie is a fucking farce.
Get up there!
Is there anything good here? Well, the actors give their A-game to an F-grade script, with Millie Bobby Brown and Ken Watanabe being the standouts. While some of the wide shots are stunning on the big screen, you've seen them all in the trailers already. We also finally get to hear the original Godzilla theme music, and while Rodan in the original films was just a giant bird, he's actually pretty cool in this movie with a neat elemental gimmick. When leaving the theatre, I originally thought that I preferred this to the 2014 original, but upon reflection, the ending of that movie, whilst taking way too long to get there and not justifying the ticket price, elated me, and I still remember watching that final action sequence unfold in the theatre and how much fun I had watching that. I didn't get anything like that in Godzilla King of the Monsters. I've seen people say they had a great and fun time with this movie, and I'm genuinely happy for them. I wish even a fraction of their excitement came my way when watching the film, but I can only speak from my own personal experiences, and I was nearly bored to tears in the theatre. There are some films which I can acknowledge as bad, but still have a fun time with ironically. A lot of those films are actually other Godzilla movies. But not here, and that pains me to say. I want to reiterate, I get no pleasure out of this review. I love Godzilla as a franchise, I love these monsters, I even had a good time with Kong Skull Island a few years back. And I adored director Michael Dougherty's last movie, Krampus. But in this rebooted universe, it's clear that this creative team have utterly failed to wrap their heads around what's enjoyable about these kaiju films. Step aside Godzilla 98 and Godzilla's Revenge, you are now no longer the worst things to happen to this franchise, and I'm giving Godzilla 2, King of the Monsters, half a star out of 5. And don't even stay through the credits for this one, it ain't worth it.